I want to get your opinion on what trending and what people on Twitter define as, and I'm going to use it, the Super Bowl massacre. You guys saw the Dark Brandon tweet. And as Aaron Monte points out here, despite the fact that the media are trying to pretend that Biden is upset with Israel and there's nothing that he can do to stop Israel, he's 100% okay with everything that's going on. In fact, he's an active participant. And this war, as well as the Ukraine war, we probably see the most fraudulent slips ever because they know they're hiding bullshit. They know they're lying. So listen to Biden explain what Rafah was really about.
The king and I also discussed the situation in Rafah. As I said yesterday, our military operation in Rafah, they're the major military operation in Rafah.
Our military operation, Ajamu.
Yeah, Fort Israel, an outpost of U.S. imperialist power. So there's an emotional and psychological connection. And so for him to make that kind of slip is understandable. I mean, he already has some issues, some cognitive issues. And so with those issues and with the emotional and psychological identification with Israel, then of course he will embrace and personify that connection with the attacks in Gaza and Rafah specifically. So yeah, this is par for the course. You know, it's important, Nick, that and I really salute the work that you all do, and stripping away all the bullshit and putting things out the way they should be, especially at this moment. Here we are witnessing an ongoing genocide that the world is outraged about, but the U.S. and its European allies continue to make excuses, continue to play games, while allowing the pit bulls, these Israeli fascists, green light to engage in the most horrendous attacks on civilians ever recorded. Now, it's not the worst that ever happened, but this is the first time that we have been given a front seat to this kind of genocide. You know, and they don't seem to understand, Nick, that the world has changed. They're never going to outlive this. They're never going to be able to engage in any kind of effective propaganda after this. But, you know, the very fact that they can attempt to rationalize this, to justify it, it shows you the extent of their, not just the fact that they are delusional, but the extent in which they can completely dehumanize a population in order to allow the most outrageous, horrendous actions to be directed at that population without any degree of guilt, any remorse. And so when people talk about how they're going to force the U.S. to do this and that and pay black folks some reparations and all of this, I'm gonna tell you, I just don't see it. If these folks can justify this kind of outrageous activity, what are you going to do to force them to try to repair you? You want reparations? You want reparations? Defeat the enemy.
Yes, my brother. I appreciate you saying that so much. I have butt head with ADOS people so many times because a lot of them are more liberal minded. A lot of them, their plan to get reparations to vote for more Democrats. Like they believe if they vote for politicians who support reparations, that would make reparation happen. And that's an absurd thing to say. I remember Rome, and this is not really that significant, but I remember Rome was attacked by ADOS one time and said, I don't give a fuck about your reparations until we liberate our people because you guys are not giving reparations without a what I would call a Marxist-Leninist revolutionary approach. You're not going to get reparations without bringing the state to heel. And any liberal approaches to get reparations, I roll my eyes at. I rolled my eyes at a complete waste of time. Another point I want to get to, and the reason why it's so important to defeat Israel, I would love your take on this as well. The reason why we must root for the ICJ, even though the ICJ doesn't have the teeth to enforce its rulings, is because we can't allow Israel and the West to redefine war. People have no idea how dangerous what Israel is doing right now. They are normalizing, like completely taking out hospitals and medical infrastructure. Do you guys remember when Barack Obama bombed a hospital and they had to acknowledge it? They had to make fake apologies about it. That was like one hospital. Now taking out hospitals is considered a normal thing. When they first bombed the hospital and it began the conflict, do you guys remember how Israel denied it? Do you guys remember how Biden was forced to say they didn't bomb the hospital? Now, so normalized, they don't even deny it no more. That yeah, we went to the hospital because Hamas is there. So they're taking hospitals where they are putting hospitals on the table. We decided a hospital was off the table. It's back on the table. We decided that collective punishment was off the table. They just put it back on the table. We decided that going after journalists was off the table. They just put it back on the table. So before we move on, do you have any thoughts on anything you want to add on before we move on to the next part?
No, I think you're absolutely right, and that's why that ICJ provisional measures are in fact important, even though they don't have the ability to follow up. The enforcement of this relies with the people. You know, this is by stripping away the legitimacy of these actions. It will, in fact, help to ensure that no other state will engage in these kinds of activities with a sense of impunity. See, people don't understand that the provisional measures basically put Israel, basically put Israel on online. It said, in essence, we're watching and we're building a case. But because Israel has been allowed impunity for so long, they just don't care, and they have continued to engage in the genocide. Well, you know, when this final declaration comes, it's going to give us some political tools that we can use. Like, for example, exercising universal jurisdiction, demanding that these various states around the world exercise their ability to, in fact, arrest and to prosecute Israeli and U.S. officials who have engaged in genocidal activities. So again, this is part of the, I guess, of the war of maneuver, if you will, stripping away the respectability, providing people an understanding of the terms of struggle. That basically, the Western powers are waging war. They're prepared to go even further and blow up the entire world before they will willingly give up power. So, you know, as long as we have things in stark terms, you know, that's good for the oppressed because it makes it more difficult for the oppressor to obscure, to mystify the relationships. So, you know, this ICJ thing is important. Who would have thought 10 years ago that
Yeah.
they would even taken up this question of genocide? But the arrogance of the Israelis and the U.S. officials has created a situation for themselves that they're never going to be able to recover from.
Yeah, it's a major miscalculation that they don't even understand they walk into. Maybe people like Pelosi, Biden, and Chuck Schumer don't care because they're gonna die soon. So maybe don't care about the long-term ramifications of this. Because when I see this, like, yeah, you guys gonna accomplish your immediate objective of obviously funding the war machine and pleasing the Zionists. But I assure you guys, this shit is going to backfire long term. You're already starting to see it. Now, this is South Africa being based once again. I dug this up shortly before the stream. South Africa urges ICJ to consider Rafah intervention, and I found this, and I haven't seen this video, but I'm interested in seeing it. It says South Africa has made urgent requests to the ICJ to declare the offensive in Rafah as needing them to exercise emergency power to prevent the genocide. And this is exactly what I said when I broke down the ICJ ruling. We need measures to effectively stop what's going on. I'm not saying the court had that power, but we need immediate mobilization to stop this because ever since this ruling, Israel hasn't stopped. But let's watch this. I'm interested to get your take on this as well.
I want you to look in the mirror and ask, where was
Why do
I
you put that music
when
on it?
Gaza was going through a genocide? South Africa is here before this court in the Peace Palace. It has done what it could. It is doing what it can by initiating these proceedings, by
I think
seeking
this is
interim measures.
yeah. Sorry guys, I don't. Once again, I didn't see this video. I think that's an older video, but I'll get back to this story because this is what I'm talking about here. How South Africa is using the ICJ. But check this out, Ajamu, and this is what I want to get your reaction to, because I saw this and I couldn't believe it. Well, I could believe it, but it's just the audacity. So after South Africa was successful, and now the South Africa legal team is now icons of anti-colonial movements, anti-genocide movements, and general civil rights, the United States is not only denying the ICJ ruling, they're now putting a bill on Congress that will quote unquote review relationships with South Africa because they call the case that they put on the ICJ politically motivated. So I'll be very interested in seeing what they mean by that. Are they saying that Israel claimed that South Africa is working with Hamas and legit? What's your initial reaction to this, Ajamu? It's crazy.
It is unhinged. It is counterproductive for their own particular interests. To further expose the moral hypocrisy of their positions. It makes no sense for them unless they believe that somehow they're going to be able to escape the condemnation of the entire world as a result of their support for this genocide in Palestine. But you have these elements in the U.S. Congress that are just that sort of short-sighted that they would seriously entertain this kind of legislation. Not understanding, Nick, that the world is changing. South Africa is part of the BRICS coalition, and say what you want about the nature of that BRICS coalition. What it does reflect is a alternative pole of developing power, a pole that represents now something like 36% of global GDP, as opposed to the 30% of global GDP now represented by the G7. So it is part of an emerging alternative power base. And this notion that the U.S. can still bully people and throw its weight around and get its way, it does not correspond to objective reality. So all it's doing is continuing to alienate itself from the rest of the world and to expose itself to the population in the U.S., a population that they have to have some degree of support from in order to continue to pursue their imperialist policies. So this is very unwise on the part of the Democrats and the Republicans, and we got to keep that in mind. These
Yes,
are
sir.
bipartisan moves. There's no difference between the Republicans and the Democrats when it comes to these kinds of positions, these kinds of cases, be it Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan. Both parties are warmongering parties, but with the Democrats being an even more pronounced warmongering party at this particular point in history. And there's reasons for that. It's connected to the segment of the ruling class that the Democrats control, Democrats represent. They represent that international bourgeoisie that's based in the U.S. That has these global interests, who have been more than willing to use military power to advance those interests. And so the war agenda is front and center in their attempts to try to maintain and expand and assert their global power. So, these are objective processes that people have to understand. There's no such thing as the nice master versus the mean master. Both of these parties represent the oppressor. We've got to be clear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Ajamu. Well said. The Make Israel Great Again movement is going to be in shambles once Donald Trump actually get power, and then we're going to be calling Trump out for his corruption. I focus on Biden now. A lot of MAGA people enjoy my Democrat criticism. Oh boy, just wait till Trump get in power. What do you think I'm gonna be? What content do you think I'm gonna be making? I'm going to be exposing Trump as the war criminal that he's going to be. Right
Exactly.
now, focus on Biden because he's in power. Democrats in charge. RBN has been a Biden administration channel. We started at the Biden administration. So MAGA is gonna the MAGA people who like our channel now because they think it's cute that we got the Democrats. You guys gonna go through some things over the next 4 years. I think Trump's gonna win, and I'm gonna expose him for being a deep state rat that he is. He was a deep state rat last time. He's gonna be a deep state rat again.